The following may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Opposition demands public probe of divers' deaths. The government-appointed investigation into the deaths of underwater welders Faisal Kurban, Kazim Ali Jr., Yusuf Henry, and Rishi Nagasar must be made public in its entirety and must be laid in Parliament for scrutiny. This is the demand of the opposition United National Congress, UNC. Chuguana's West MP Dinesh Rambali, an attorney, said yesterday all efforts must be made to protect the report from corruption. He also said the 45-day delivery period was too long and opened the way for the process to be influenced. The opposition is also sticking to its objection to inclusion of former Energy Chamber Chairman Eugene Tiah to the team probing the incident in which the 4 divers were sucked into number 36 Sea Riser pipeline at Berth 6 Pointe-à-Pierre on February 25. The 5-member team was announced last week by Energy Minister Stuart Young and is chaired by attorney Shiv Sharma, with members Tiah, subsea specialist Gregory Wilson, and 1 representative each from Shell and BP. The team is tasked with probing the circumstances under which the divers lost their lives while carrying out an underwater operation for Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited. The men worked for a private company, LMCS Limited, which was owned by Ali Jr.'s family and had been contracted by Paria, which has since cut ties with LMCS. One diver attached to the team, Christopher Boodram, was rescued and survived. An overwhelming public call has gone out for clear answers on the incident, while the opposition is among those calling for the board of Paria to be fired. Speaking at the UNC's weekly news conference, Rambali said, while there is no legal requirement for the Paria board, chaired by Newman George, to step down, it would be the correct thing to do. He expressed concern that the board's presence could influence the report and noted the overall view of the opposition that the report was not truly independent and confidence could not be placed in it. Rambali stated, I want to make the point here that there is no automatic culpability attributed to the LMCS, the immediate employer of the divers, who was an independent contractor employed by Paria. The courts have determined time and time again that although generally a person is not responsible for the negligence of an independent contractor employed by him, such is not the case where the work involved is an extra hazardous and inherently dangerous operation creating special risk of harm. In such situations, the person who orders the work to be done cannot relieve himself from liability by employing someone else to do it, and he is just as responsible for the negligence of an independent contractor as if he had done the work himself. The opposition again accused Paria of failing to seek to save the divers' lives in a timely manner. Rambali pointed to the subsea nature of the operation in which the divers were involved and said under the circumstances and the increased special dangers created by the environment in which they were required to work, Paria had a duty of reasonable care towards their lives. This was an accident occurring in a more or less enclosed space deep underwater. The question was there sufficient safety mechanisms in place, and more importantly, were these readily available in the event of an emergency? Rambali asked. If they had a plan, they did not put it into practice. Clearly not even a knee-jerk response. We would have been glad for a knee-jerk response. In fact, there was no timely response at all, he added. Rambali said no one was saying anything, and going on reports, there were questions as to why Paria appeared unwilling to facilitate a rescue, including by volunteer teams. What we have not seen to date is the adoption and or implementation of a crisis management and emergency operations plan, which ought to have already been in place, Rambali said. It ought to have been designed by Paria to maximize human survival and preservation of property, minimize danger, restore normal operations of the company, and assure responsive communications, he added. He said this plan ought to have been ready and set in operation whenever a natural or induced emergency affecting the company reaches proportions that cannot be handled by established measures. A crisis may be sudden and unforeseen, or there may be varying periods of warning. This plan is supposed to be sufficiently flexible to accommodate contingencies of all types, magnitudes, and durations, Rambali said. The opposition said it must be probed whether Paria failed to have in place policies and procedures which prevent personnel from promptly and or adequately rescuing a diver, and or fail to maintain and monitor security cameras to provide real-time information which could assist in recovery. It must also be ascertained whether the company failed to provide the means to the divers to remain for a reasonable period of time whilst rescue efforts were deployed. The UNC has maintained that Paria's treatment of the deceased divers' families was inhumane, and Rambali listed several gestures which he said were lacking on behalf of the state-owned company. The Chaguanas West MP said, according to information including from attorneys representing the families, Paria is yet to assist even as funerals for the fallen divers have started. Even if the assistance is not required, the offer may be a step toward building a relationship, Rambali said. Common humanity dictates that when people are in grief or facing the possibility of a death of a loved one, you go to them, Rambali said. Physically go and meet them, tell them what information you have so far, offer some solace and support, he said. He said during their ordeal, humanitarian requirements that should have been met by Paria were not extended, including providing the grieving families with personal contact and timely information and a private space within which they may have waited in relative comfort. He said instead, Paria executives stayed locked up all cozy and dry inside their offices, while the families were outside in the rain and sun in the car park. Rambali said Paria showed no corporate conscience nor any idea of best practice. Opposition calls for Eugene Tiah to step down from the investigative team. The opposition United National Congress (UNC) is calling on former Energy Chamber Chairman Eugene Tiah to disclose whether he is a card-carrying member of the People's National Movement (PNM). Speaking at the UNC's weekly news conference yesterday, Couva South MP Rudranath Indar Singh said the opposition maintained that a team appointed by the government to probe a February 25 incident in which 4 underwater welders lost their lives has been compromised by the inclusion of Tiah. Calling the incident a national tragedy, Indar Singh said the opposition will maintain its call for Tiah to step down from the investigating team. Similarly, he said any other member of the team who may be conflicted should do the honorable thing and resign. Opposition leader Kamla Prasad Bisasar at the weekend called for Tiah to be removed from the 5-member investigating team, saying he had ties to the PNM. The opposition has objected to Tiah based on Young's past role as his attorney in a 2014 matter involving former executives of Evolving Technologies Limited, ETech. Young said Tiah was nominated by the Energy Chamber, and that organization has since expressed its confidence in its former chairman. Also speaking at the news conference, Mayaro MP Rushton Paray said the terms of reference TOR given to the investigating committee are deeply flawed and heavily slanted to absolve the state-owned company from any responsibility and accountability for this incident, adding that the investigation into the tragic incident at Paria would not reveal the truth. Stating he was a contractor who had served the petrochemical industry for 25 years. He accused Paria of failing to have in place a crisis management plan at the required standard. He further stated that too much cost-cutting could have impacted the circumstances under which the divers lost their lives, as well as rescue efforts. Homicide toll rises as 3 men are found dead. The country recorded another homicide with the shooting death of a Maracas man in Block 8, John, Laventille. According to police reports, the dead man was identified as Adrian Belasso, 46. His last known address was in Maracas. Police said about 11 a.m. on Sunday, loud explosions were heard coming from Plaisance Terrace, and after checks were made, a man of African descent with a slim build and a Rasta hairstyle was seen in the roadway with wounds to the left side of his head and abdomen. Several spent shells were also seen on the road. The victim was wearing a white jersey and khaki pants. Diego Martin man found dead after trip to Minimart. On Friday, a 51-year-old man was shot multiple times in Diego Martin. He was identified as Ronnie Ford of LP Barter Circular Ravine Road, Diego Martin, and of Rio Claro. A police report said at around 9:15 p.m. on Friday, Ford left his Ravine Road home to go to a Minimart. While there, he got into an argument with a man and shortly after gunshots were heard. Police found Ford's body with gunshot wounds. He died at the scene. Fathead erased by unknown assailants. In another unrelated incident, a 22-year-old man was found dead in Malik Barataria on Saturday. He was identified as Raheem Edwards, also known as Fathead. A police report on this shooting said Edwards was shot at about 4 p.m. Police said residents heard a series of gunshots and a group of men seen fleeing the scene. One man was found on the roadway lying on his back with a gunshot wound to his head. Police said they have no motive for this homicide. However, patrols are expected to be increased in the community since this area has seen a recent spike in violent crimes over the last month. The 3 latest homicides have taken the homicide toll for the year to 93, according to a police tally. In other crime-related news, officers of the Interagency Task Force and K-9 Unit conducted a strike-back exercise between 10:30 p.m. on Saturday and 1 a.m. on Sunday in the Laventille area. The exercise was spearheaded by WACP Jackman, Senior Superintendent Suero, ASPs Ramisar and Cuffy, and was coordinated by Inspector Serju and supervised by Corporal De Silva. Police said during the exercise at about 11:30 p.m., PC Lowell went to Leotard Street, Laventille, with a search warrant for weapons and ammunition. He found a black suitcase with a Glock pistol fitted with a laser attachment, another Glock, an American Omni hybrid multi-caliber rifle fitted with a scope, a Stag Arms rifle, 11 pistol magazines, 11 rifle magazines, 245 rounds of 5.56 ammunition, 64 rounds of 9mm ammunition, 85 rounds of 40 caliber ammunition, a Glock speed loader, an M16 magazine speed loader, and a CYA holster.